When I married Wei Sun, he actually had someone else in his heart. But that person's status was too low to meet the Wei family's standards. For the long term, he chose me. My family background wasn't particularly distinguished, and I had a gentle, accommodating nature. Most importantly, I didn't like him. We agreed to live together as partners. After 2 years, I would help him marry the woman he loved. But when that day finally came, he looked at the betrothal gifts I'd prepared and spoke slowly. Actually, she got married last month. I frowned. What are we supposed to do now? Why didn't you tell me sooner? He glanced at me and suddenly smiled. Well, there's still you. Huh? But I was planning to leave too. Before marrying Wei Sun, I had actually been engaged to someone else. He was the son of the loyal and valiant Marquis. I'd met him a few times, handsome, with ears that would turn crimson whenever he glanced at me. I couldn't say I loved him. Exactly. But I truly looked forward to marrying him. He'd always been upright and virtuous, going out of his way to learn my preferences. Every so often, he'd send people with gifts for me. It was clear he cared. My parents often remarked that if Su Changjin married me, he'd likely spoil me rotten. Yet no one could have foreseen that 5 months before my wedding, the Wei family began selecting a principal wife for Wei Sun. The Wei household held such prestige that any noble maiden in the capital could be his bride if he desired. This opportunity should never have fallen to me. Yet Wei Sun disapproved of the brides the Wei family selected for him, refusing to give his consent. He had someone else in his heart. He intended to bring her into his home someday. He loved her so deeply, dreading any injustice toward her, fearing it with every fiber of his being. It was under these circumstances that he rode past on the street. Just as I was arguing with the shopkeeper, I had bought fabric here only days before, and it had faded within 2 days of returning home. I needed this fabric to embroider gifts for Su Changjin's sisters. It couldn't be careless work. But I was too tongue-tied then, stumbling over my words after just a few sentences. He watched from outside, reining in his horse. His eyebrows lifted in a smile as he asked, "Shall I seek justice for you?" I swear, had I known this justice would cost me the rest of my life to repay, I'd never have let him help me. As he left, he lifted his gaze to meet mine, his expression calm. "Which family's daughter are you?" he asked. He'd just helped me, so I took him for a good man. I let my guard down completely, spilling my secrets after barely 2 sentences. But later, I came to understand, a girl's innocence never ends well. Within days, my betrothal to Su Changjin was annulled. Wei Sun had petitioned the emperor for a royal match. On our wedding night, he confessed plainly he would never touch me. Beyond love, he could give me anything. The Wei clan held immense power, and with the emperor's personal decree, he left me no choice. All I had to do was help him with one thing. That was to help him marry his true love in 2 years' time, and then treat her well. The reason for the 2-year delay was that he had already done many foolish things for Wang Ruoqing. After much deliberation, the Wei family saw that he was willing to marry me, so they each made concessions and set this deadline. Su Changjin and I never met again. In the 2nd month after I married into the Wei family, I heard he had gone south to take up an official post. And so, I became Wei Sun's wife. At first, I even thought it was quite nice. I didn't have to curry favor with Wei Sun, we were more like partners sharing a life together. Nor did I have to serve the elders. They were all kind people who understood the circumstances of this marriage and were very considerate of me, afraid I might be treated poorly. But as time went on, I began to think differently. The reason was simple, being sandwiched between 2 lovers was truly awkward. Wei Xuan's true love was the daughter of the Wang family brewery in Yongxing Alley. That place was worlds apart from Qingyu Lane, where the Wei residence stood. But he truly adored her. In the early days of our marriage, He would linger outside until late every night after court. Yongxing Lane teemed with unreasonable folk, and disturbances at the brewery were frequent occurrences. He felt compelled to keep watch, fearing the Wang family might suffer injustice in his absence. Over time, it became common knowledge that Wang Ruoqing had powerful backing. She was a deeply compassionate girl, always stepping in to help whenever she witnessed injustice. Beggars in ragged clothes looked pitiful. She gave them food and silver. When relatives came seeking shelter, she bustled about arranging lodgings for them, then scrambled to find them livelihoods. Yet for her, these acts were no simple matter. Ultimately, it all fell on my shoulders. Those people would camp outside the Wei residence day after day, insisting Miss Wang had promised them and couldn't go back on her word. Wei Sun was swamped at the time and rarely at home. I couldn't find him. I had to clean up the mess myself. Once everything was settled, Wang Ruoqing personally delivered food to the door, begging Wei Sun to pass it on for her. Her eyes were blurred with tears as she looked at Wei Sun, utterly aggrieved. She insisted this wasn't her true intention. She never meant to cause him trouble. Only then did Wei Sun learn of everything I had done. Carrying the food box, he came to my courtyard for the first time. Under the moonlight, he lifted his gaze and looked at me, and suddenly froze. I didn't take the box. I merely smiled at him. 500 taels. He frowned in surprise. What? I explained. I did something for you. Surely you owe me compensation? He paused, a hint of awkwardness flickering in his expression. The very next day, he sent someone to deliver 500 taels to me. After that incident, he rarely sought out Wang Ruoqing privately anymore. From then on, our relationship remained unchanged. Whatever he needed me to do, it was simple, just pay the silver. I helped him select cosmetics and purchase clothing for Wang Ruoqing. He reciprocated, occasionally gifting me calligraphy, paintings, or ancient texts in addition to the silver. My close friends, whom I played with often, all married one after another, yet none lived lives like mine. Later, he became entangled in a case and was thrown into prison. The Wei residence was surrounded by soldiers, sealed off from the outside world. I happened to be away from the mansion at the time, narrowly escaping that ordeal. Disguised and disguised, I ran errands for him, spending every last coin I'd earned from him like water, just to see him once. When he saw me, he rose to his feet in disbelief. After a long moment, he let out a deep, hollow sigh. How did you come here? Only later did I learn this had all been a setup. Everyone in the Wei residence knew. Wang Ruoqing knew. Only I was kept in the dark. That was when I first considered leaving. But before I could figure out how to divorce Wei Sun or what to do next, I had no choice but to wait. Perhaps out of guilt, Wei Sun never once mentioned Wang Ruoqing to me again over the next half year. Once, returning together from outside the estate after dusk, our courtyards lay in opposite directions. At the fork, he held his lantern and asked obliquely, "The snow fell just yesterday. Is the snow deep in the hawthorn courtyard?" His question was rather pointless. The servants had cleared all the snow early this morning. Not a trace of the snowfall remained. A long wind swept through the courtyard, scattering the snow-white blossoms like rain. I counted on my fingers. Wei Sun was finally about to get his wish. I had the betrothal gifts prepared. Not numerous, but each item was precious. They were taken from Wei Sun's private treasury. Long ago, when he emerged from prison, he had given me the key. He said I was his wife. These things rightfully belonged to me to safeguard. At first, whenever I needed to draw from his private treasury for social engagements, I would send word to him. But after several times, he grew displeased. He clicked his tongue, tilting his head slightly as his gaze flickered. "Take whatever you want. Empty it all if you please. Now." It was for his beloved's wedding. I felt even less restraint. I had all these items moved to Wei Sun's courtyard. I waited outside the courtyard for Wei Sun. It wasn't long before he returned. His steps halted upon seeing me, his thin lips curving slightly. After a moment, he actually chuckled softly. "It's rare for you to come looking for me." I nodded. "I prepared a surprise for you." This time, he refused to step inside. He frowned at me, even his breathing becoming cautious. "You prepared this yourself?" I nodded, feeling rather pleased. Yes. It took quite an effort. His gaze grew dark, fixed on me without movement. It was mid-afternoon, bright rays threaded through my hair, landing on his lashes, shimmering with floating gold. His throat moved, and for a moment, he seemed deeply content, letting out a soft chuckle. I assumed he'd guessed the surprise I'd mentioned, nodded knowingly, and then took the lead into the courtyard. He followed behind me. When the sight of red silk filling the courtyard met my eyes, I turned back with delight, about to boast a little, only to see that Wei Sun had stopped walking at some point. His gaze fell on me, his expression slightly cold. I was caught off guard by that look, unsure of its meaning. After a moment's thought, I didn't press him. Instead, I continued on my own. I figured the 2-year deadline is almost up. If Miss Ching has waited this long for you, I quickly gathered some betrothal gifts. Take these to welcome her, she'll surely be delighted. Having said that, I considered my task accomplished. Take a look. If everything seems in order, I'll arrange for someone to propose to the Wang family tomorrow. Truth be told, it wasn't out of some saintly compassion that I was rushing to bring them together. Ever since deciding to leave, I'd been pondering how to dissolve my marriage with Wei Sun. Deep down, I knew he'd never agree. He had worked so hard to find someone as easily manipulated as me, scheming to ruin my marriage to Su Changjin, all to ensure I would treat his chosen bride well in the future. If I left, all his efforts would be for naught. Worse still, he would need to find another suitable secondary wife like me in a very short time. Thus, over the past half-year, I had deliberately sought to please Wei's mother, to win her favor. I served her diligently every day, never slacking even in the bitter cold of winter. To ease her headaches, I spared no effort in seeking out physicians and studying treatment techniques. She has always treated me well, though with a touch more distance and a touch less warmth. Yet over time, as human hearts are made of flesh, she gradually began to consider my well-being and show concern for my affairs. She even offered advice, hoping Wei Sun and I could build a good life together. Whenever I heard such words, I remained silent. It wasn't until a few days ago that I confessed everything to her. Through tears, I poured out the hardships of these years, pleading with her to speak to the emperor on my behalf. After all, this was an arranged marriage. To dissolve it, I had to get past this hurdle. Wei's mother was the emperor's aunt and always had influence with him. If she was willing, the matter was as good as settled. If she wasn't, I had made up my mind. I'd rather tear apart my relationship with Wei Sun and become a villainous wife. For Wang Ruoqing's sake, he wouldn't tolerate me either. Standing before the screen, Wei's mother remained silent for a long while before finally sighing. Very well. I knew our Wei family could never keep such a fine daughter-in-law. My son has butter on his brain, abandoning a girl as wonderful as you to obsess over. As she spoke, she pressed her temples with a look of exasperation. Very well. Let's wait until he brings that Wang family girl into the house. Better to avoid stirring up more trouble and unnecessary complications. I can't help but feel he has some sort of. She trailed off, leaving the last sentence unspoken. I didn't understand that final remark, but the rest of her words were crystal clear. If I were to leave, Wei Sun would likely rush to find another suitable match. causing quite a commotion before he'd finally agreed to let Wang Ruoqing into the family. I nodded in agreement. Only then did I begin to urgently arrange the matter. But now, at this very moment, I had even prepared the betrothal gifts. Wei Sun and his beloved were about to be within arm's reach, sharing every moment. Yet he seemed afflicted by some strange ailment. Not only did his face show no trace of joy, but the look he gave me grew distinctly peculiar. He glanced at me sideways, his tone flat and tinged with an inexplicable irritation. A marriage proposal? You've certainly gone to great lengths. I readily agreed, it's nothing much. I've always enjoyed seeing lovers find their happily ever after. He stared at me for a long time before sighing deeply. Actually, she married last month. His expression was grim, yet his voice was slow and measured. For a moment, I couldn't detect any trace of regret in his tone. My heart skipped a beat. The news nearly made me lose my composure on the spot. I wondered if I'd missed something these past days. Given Wei Sun's nature, whatever he set his sights on would inevitably be his. Just like back then, I'd merely shown him a vulnerable side. And he schemed relentlessly to marry me. Yet he never truly cared for me. For a long time after our marriage, he didn't even know my real name wasn't Lin Shu. My name was Lin Shu. He hadn't even read the imperial decree carefully, assuming Shu meant chaste and quiet, the virtues of a virtuous lady. But it wasn't. Graceful demeanor, tender heart. My parents never believed a girl must be prim and proper, managing the household. They wanted me to live beautifully, following my heart. That's exactly how I was as a child. But later, when I became betrothed to Su Changjin, he treated me with such devotion that I felt compelled to become better, to live up to his expectations. That's when I gradually learned to manage the household, to be gentle and considerate. Yet, in the end, when Wei Sun came inquiring about the third Miss Lin, it was precisely these qualities that satisfied him. So now, I find myself utterly baffled. Wei Sun adored Wang Ruoqing, cherished her like a precious treasure. How could he possibly stand by and watch her marry another? Of course, that matter can wait. With this whole charade he's orchestrated now, who knows if the divorce proceedings might take an unexpected turn? The thought made me grow irritated. I couldn't help but look up at him, pointing at the dowry in the courtyard. What about this? Why didn't you say anything sooner? And besides, she's already married, aren't you the least bit anxious? To fight, to seize, to claim. Isn't that what he excels at? He didn't rush to answer. Instead, he first raised his hand to brush a fallen leaf from my shoulder before speaking in a tone that was both casual and pointed. Isn't there still you? Since she's already married, let her be. I was speechless. His words made it sound as if we shared deep affection. But the truth was, there was no bond between us. If anything, he owed me everything. 5 months ago, we encountered assassins in the countryside. I was about to hide ever since that incident in prison. I'd resolved never to care about his life again. Of course, I had no martial arts skills to help him. But strangely, the assassins seemed to have poor aim, striking at me with every blow. I couldn't dodge in time and was slashed. That night, he held me close, nearly blinded by rage, almost mad as he rushed me to the clinic. Afterwards, he stayed by my side for half a month, watching my every meal, terrified something might happen to me again. When I woke, my first thought was, the Wei family attracts too much attention. Wei Sun truly invites hatred. Then came all the other things from these years. Too many to count. As I thought about it, a wave of sadness washed over me. So intense I nearly cried. These past years had always been like this. Whenever I saw the pavilion on the lake, the flower-covered wall in the west wing, or the moonlight on the horizon, tears would well up. I held back the tears, gazing at Wei Sun, nearly blurting out the words divorce. Recalling Wei's mother's admonition, I forced myself to swallow them. In the end, pretending I hadn't heard his words, I urged him again, so you've set your sights on another girl? If there is someone, just tell me. Apart from falling for someone else. I couldn't think of anything else that could explain his current behavior. Wei Sun glanced at me with a puzzled look upon hearing this. After a moment, he suddenly chuckled and countered. If I truly did have a girl I liked, no matter who she was, would you help me? I instinctively looked back at Wei Sun. I answered him sincerely. Of course. But only if it doesn't violate moral principles. At this point, he seemed to have realized something. The smile on his lips slowly faded. He turned away, standing with his hands behind his back. The white hem of his robe tangled with the red silk, adding an air of sinister foreboding. He said, After that day, I kept a close watch for a long time. Yet I never once saw any other girl by Wei Sun's side. I couldn't understand how Wei Sun and Wang Ruoqing had come to this point. My heart burned with anxiety. I refused to sit idly by and wait for disaster. So I grew ever more attentive in my efforts to win over Wei's mother. Meanwhile, I paid another visit to the Wang family's wine shop. Seated in the carriage, I lifted the curtain and glanced outside. Just then, I saw Wang Ruoqing emerge from within. I hadn't seen her in ages. She hadn't changed much, still as delicate as a willow in the wind, with eyes full of emotion and a slender waist. Sure enough, a man, likely a scholar, followed her, chatting incessantly. Yet Wang Ruoqing remained distant, her spirit seemingly drained. My heart sighed. Wei Sun hadn't lied. Wang Ruoqing was indeed married. When I first saw her, I merely paused in surprise, thinking, so this is the woman my husband admires. Truthfully, their first meeting held no breathtaking drama. The year Wei Sun passed the imperial examinations, he celebrated with classmates at a tavern. Amidst the clinking cups, Wang Ruoqing gracefully emerged, offering him a cup of warm water and murmuring softly, drinking harms the body. Thus, their bond was formed. She wasn't exceptionally beautiful, not even as striking as any other girl he'd ever seen. But that was the height of his triumph. Through the haze of intoxication, he saw her face like a lotus blossom, and that was enough. As time passed and they grew closer, he came to appreciate Wang Ruoqing's uniqueness more and more. She never feared or admired his family background. And she was so kind. Of course, before that, I'd never imagined that after marriage, I'd actually have to take a concubine for my husband. It was simple. The moment I first saw Su Changjin, I knew he'd never reach that day. He blushed so easily, and he simply couldn't handle so many women. I stepped down from the carriage and merely had a cup of tea at the tea house next door. Yet I heard everything clearly. The tea house proprietress explained that the Wang family's daughter was originally destined to marry into a wealthy household as a concubine. Everything had been settled, and she was merely awaiting her formal entry this year. The two had always gotten along quite well. But perhaps they got along too well. After Wang Ruoqing met the high official's primary wife several times, she decided the woman was an easy target. She then harbored ulterior motives, aspiring to become a co-wife. Wei Sun had initially agreed, but within days, he was thrown into prison. After that, somehow, the matter fell through. Some say that day, she saw Wei Sun emerge from the brewery, with Wang Ruoqing trailing behind, running and cursing, "What's gotten into you? I merely said a few words about her, and you're already upset. She was just the stepping stone you found for me, wasn't she? Now you're actually feeling sorry for her?" Wei Sun turned his head and glared fiercely at her. Wang Ruoqing waited another 2 months, only to hear that the young mistress of the Wei household had been injured and Wei Sun was scouring the city for a clinic. Furious, she began drawing closer to the scholar who had long admired her. But this ploy backfired. Not only did Wei Sun fail to appear, he even sent gold, silver, and dowry items to the tavern, urging her to marry quickly. The standoff dragged on. In the end, it culminated in this very situation. I never imagined Wei Sun orchestrated this entire affair. I left Yongxing Lane. The carriage rolled slowly through the streets. Staring blankly at the windowsill, a thread in my mind slowly began to weave together everything that had happened these past days. Just as I was about to grasp the crucial point, the carriage jerked to a sudden halt. The coachman called out hesitantly from outside, "Young master." The next instant, I lifted my head. The man lifted the curtain, studied me for a moment, then exhaled slowly, his face stern. He declared, "You are forbidden to seek her out again." I looked at him, saying nothing. He seemed to be seething with anger, shouting my name again with force. "Lin Shu! Did you hear a word I said?" The street was chaotic, a cacophony of noise all around. I heard vendors hawking their wares, children wailing. I lifted my eyelids to see Wei Sun's impassive face. He was gripping my wrist. His strength was astonishing. Just as I was about to speak, a voice outside the carriage caught my ear, familiar and distinctly roguish. "Lord Wei?" Wei Sun froze instantly. He glanced at me hesitantly, seeming to regret stopping me here. He released my hand and carefully drew the curtain shut. I heard him conversing with the person outside. "Is this the lady in the carriage, the one Lord Wei still hasn't formally claimed as his beloved?" The question was asked with a teasing edge, as if deliberately stirring trouble. Wei Sun replied, "No." The man pressed on, "A few days ago, I asked you to convey my regards to your esteemed wife. Did you deliver them?" Wei Sun gritted his teeth. "I did not." After a few more muffled exchanges outside, Wei Sun finally climbed back inside. I heard faint, barely audible hoofbeats approaching from outside. It sounded like a challenge, yet also like a soothing gesture. Wei Sun remained silent, making no further mention of the earlier incident. We walked together in this awkward silence. Who could have imagined that the day I went to see his beloved would be the very same day he encountered my former fiancé? But this incident did help me realize something. These past few days, Wei Sun had been deliberately or inadvertently preventing me from going out. Whenever I mentioned leaving, he would become visibly uncomfortable, instinctively finding excuses to keep me there. It was because Su Changjin had returned. At the gates of the Wei residence, I ignored Wei Sun and walked straight inside. Watching my retreating figure, he suddenly spoke. "I didn't let you go find Wang Ruoqing because I wanted what was best for you." I nodded. I'm not stupid. I'd already figured it out earlier. The assassin who tried to kill Wei Sun that day was actually targeting me. And the one who hired the killer was none other than Wang Ruoqing. I'd heard hiring assassins cost an arm and a leg. She couldn't possibly afford such an astronomical sum. That silver was likely from Wei Sun's past attempts to win her favor. But she'd misplayed her hand, utterly destroying the image of the beloved maiden in Wei Sun's heart. That very night, I sought out Wei's mother. Before I could even state my purpose, she beckoned me over. Come closer." I paused, then approached. She took my hand, clasping it tightly, then retrieved a bundle from nearby and pressed it into my grasp. "Hold this securely." I lowered my gaze. Inside were silver notes and land deeds. My hands trembled as I began to grasp what was happening. She spoke. "These past 2 years, I've seen everything you've done. It's Sun who has wronged you. I've heard about what happened today. Once the imperial decree arrives tomorrow, you should leave early. Otherwise, while I can let you go, he might not. If I'm not mistaken, he's already developed feelings for you." I pressed my lips together. After today, Even a fool would see that Wei Sun's feelings for me are truly extraordinary. At this point, Mother Wei sighed. If he finds out I let you go, who knows how he'll react? Tears welled in my eyes as I clutched the items in my hand. Mother. Thank you. She stroked my hair, her voice catching slightly. I've long considered you my own daughter. There's no need for thanks. But if you must thank someone, thank that young man from the Su family. He's truly risen to prominence now. After winning several battles in the northern wastes, he's become an imperial confidant overnight. A title of nobility, king or marquis, is surely just a matter of time. Only then did I understand the imperial decree for our divorce and Su Changjin's situation. The emperor, out of deference to Wei Sun, had intended to question him personally. But coincidentally, Su Changjin entered the palace to see the emperor and casually mentioned Wei Sun's entanglement with Wang Ruqing. That a high-ranking minister would be entangled with a common woman displeased the emperor, who promptly issued the decree. Unable to refuse, I reluctantly took half the banknotes, tucking them into my sleeve. As I crossed the long corridor, I unexpectedly encountered Wei Sun. The night air was cool as water. The man walked with a lamp in hand, his neatly tailored brocade robe and black sash blending into the shadows. His boots made no sound as he hurried across the blue stone pavers. When he saw me, the entire garden seemed to stir with a spring breeze caressing willow branches. In that instant, his gaze locked on me, and he suddenly smiled. I was just looking for you. The night air is chilly. Why not stay indoors? I replied casually, then tried to slip past him to return home sooner. Reflecting now, he had treated me this way throughout the past half-year. He always worried I wasn't warm enough or slept poorly. He spent a fortune on the finest fragrances for me. When he heard I wanted to learn horseback riding, he gifted me a magnificent white steed and patiently accompanied me through every practice session. After morning court, he'd detour from the north to the south of the city just to buy my favorite hibiscus cakes from that particular shop. Then he'd make the long way back. Day after day. He never once complained of fatigue. But back then, I never considered this possibility. I believed he did all these things for Wang Ruoqing. He feared I might treat Wang Ruoqing poorly in the future. Who could have imagined he actually liked me? And now, having finally understood this truth, I encountered him face to face for the first time. As we passed each other, Wei Sun suddenly tugged at my sleeve. I glanced sideways. His head tilted slightly, his gaze both intriguing and tinged with flattery. The flower festival is just a few days away. Tomorrow I'll request leave from His Majesty. Then take you to Yangzhou for a trip. What do you say? I rarely celebrated the flower festival. The only time I did was with Su Changjin. That year, we had just become betrothed and were still getting to know each other. Lanterns hung high, illuminating the night. He stood across from me, his face defiant yet hesitant. After a long moment, he finally managed to call out softly, carefully, "Miss Lin." Thinking of this, the silver note tucked in my sleeve grew faintly warm. I pressed my lips together. "Shall we go tomorrow?" He smiled. "Yes." He met my gaze, his eyes gentle and sincere. "From now on, shall we always be like this?" I pondered for a moment. Then return later tomorrow after taking leave. I need to prepare something. I don't want you to see it. It was the first time I'd ever spoken such words. His eyes brightened slightly, and he quickly replied, as if afraid I might change my mind. "All right. As you wish." I breathed a sigh of relief. Had he gone to the emperor first thing and learned of the divorce decree, that imperial edict would likely never have reached our residence. I'd seen his thunderous methods before. Early the next morning, Wei Sun left the estate. Surveying the courtyard, I suddenly realized how many things here had been gifts from Wei Sun. My personal maid, Yulio, had been with me since childhood. I hadn't hidden the divorce from her. She looked surprised for a moment, then asked me with some confusion, "Miss, your husband has grown fond of you. There will never be another like Wang Ruoqing between you two. Why insist on this divorce?" She believed their present situation couldn't be better. The Wei family's status is so high. Marrying into this household means endless blessings. Now that I've won Wei Sun's affection, the future seems wide open. Why insist on a divorce and become a discarded wife? I thought long and hard before telling her. I just feel that life here grows harder to bear with each passing day. As for why, I can't quite explain it. Even if he truly has those feelings for me, what difference would it make? It's simply too late now. Had this happened when we were newlyweds, when my husband cherished me and troubles were few, I could have lived out my days contentedly. Until our hair turned white. Until our home was filled with children and grandchildren. But now, the thought of spending my future with Wei Sun like this makes my skin crawl. I just want to run away. I packed quickly. Wei Xuan had departed barely half an hour ago. No sooner had I breathed a sigh of relief than someone rushed into the courtyard. "Madam!" I just saw the young master heading this way. My eyelid twitched. At this hour, he should already be at the palace. Unless he turned back midway. Could it be he's learned of the imperial decree? The thought made me rush into the courtyard, instructing Yulio to hide the items I'd just packed away. I'd lived in this courtyard for 2 years. Yet standing here now, I felt inexplicably tense. Soon, footsteps approached. Then, someone strode swiftly before me. With a sweep of his sleeves, he drew me into his embrace. A faint scent of agarwood clung to him. His breath was slightly ragged, and the arms holding me trembled slightly. I froze for a moment, wanting to push him away. But the disparity in our strength was too great. My feeble effort felt no different than tickling Wei Sun. Wei Sun let out a soft chuckle. Yet his embrace tightened further. I took a deep breath and tentatively asked, "Why did you come back?" Wei Sun loosened his hold slightly. His eyes lowered, a flicker of confusion and bewilderment passing through them. He said, "Halfway there." I suddenly felt a pang of anxiety. I kept thinking that if I left, when I returned, you wouldn't be here anymore. He'd hit the nail on the head, yet I showed no trace of it on my face. I smiled. How could that be? Where could I possibly go? Half his face was still buried in my hair, his right hand gripping my wrist and holding it before him. The gesture was intimate and natural, as if I were a precious treasure. Yet it also felt like confinement, leaving me unable to move. He said, "I was overthinking." I hummed in acknowledgement, biting my lip, then asked instinctively, "But what if you return and find I've truly left?" He fell silent for a moment before suddenly snorting softly. "Simple. If you leave, I'll win your favor. Until you're willing to come back." I froze. The next instant, he released me, turned his back, and murmured softly, "Lin Shu, you're so clever. You must have already figured it out. You're in my heart. I haven't set my sights on any other girl. From now on, shall we stay together properly?" Su Changjin. He's back. That man is cunning and deceitful. Don't trust him. After saying this, before I could respond, he strode away. He'd likely be late for court this morning. Not long after, the imperial edict arrived. The imperial messenger was the same eunuch who had come to the Lin residence to announce the arranged marriage. He scanned the room, not seeing Wei Sun, and frowned slightly. When I left the palace earlier, court had already adjourned. "Has Minister Wei not returned yet?" I replied, "Not yet. He must have been delayed by some matter." The Wei family members knelt silently nearby. The eunuch glanced at Wei's mother but asked no further questions, proceeding to read the imperial decree aloud. I knelt to receive the edict. From beginning to end, Wei Sun never appeared. The divorce was thus finalized. As I prepared to leave, the servants in my courtyard wept bitterly. These past 2 years, Wei Sun and I had grown distant. But I had grown attached to these people around me. Wei's mother bid me farewell with a take care, then returned to her quarters without seeing me again. I left the Wei residence without looking back. Yu Lu seemed a bit melancholy. Where shall we go? Young lady? Return to the Lin residence? We must return. Since marrying into the Wei household, I hadn't seen my parents in ages. They were quite pleased with Su Changjin as a son-in-law. And naturally, they didn't care much for Wei Sun. Later, upon learning of Wang Ruqing's affair, they constantly regretted not marrying me off sooner. Now that I'd returned to the Lin residence, they were overjoyed, busily arranging banquets and moving belongings into my chambers. After lunch, Wei Sun came looking for me. At first, my parents refused to let him in. But Wei Sun is a stubborn man. Denied entry. He simply waited outside. He waited for 2 whole hours. He isn't particularly patient. And frankly, he could have forced his way in. With his status, no one could stop him. But as luck would have it, while he was waiting outside the main gate, Su Changjin happened to arrive for a visit. The gatekeeper, upon seeing him, didn't even bother to announce his arrival. He simply opened the gate. Clearly, these days, Su Changjin's visits to the Lin residence had become as commonplace as daily meals. The Wei and Lin families had been in-laws for 2 years. He rarely visited the Lin residence. Even during the initial marriage period, he struggled to manage accompanying me on my return visit to my parents' home. Midway through the meal, upon hearing that Wang Ruqing had clashed with someone, he immediately dropped his chopsticks and left. Now, standing at the gate, he was treated worse than a stranger. Su Changjin entered the gate and happened to bump into me. After all these years, seeing me no longer made him uncomfortable. He flashed me a bright smile. You're back. Only then did I recall that he was among the first to know about our divorce. The once haughty and upright youth who'd had his fiancée stolen away had, over the years, grown considerably more cunning. I nodded. Yes. I'm back. As our eyes met, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, revealing a hint of unrestrained spirit. I recalled the whispers I'd overheard from the common folk on my way back from the Wei residence that morning. I heard you've become a general. Congratulations. He arched an eyebrow, about to speak, when the sound of something shattering echoed from nearby. Su Changjin instinctively shielded me behind him. I looked up to see Wei Sun standing mere steps away. He stood motionless, expressionless, clutching a jade pendant. The pendant was shattered, half remained in his hand, the other half scattered on the ground, as if it had been crushed by a human hand. Looking closer, his hand was clearly dripping with blood. The gatekeeper who had followed him and the servants nearby were all startled, staring at the scene with wide eyes. Everyone in the capital knew Wei Sun was cunning and unflappable. Even if a mountain collapsed before him, it was rare to see him lose his composure in such a fit of shock and anger. A chill wind swept across their faces. Su Changjin let out a soft sigh. When did Lord Wei learn to break into people's homes? Wei Sun instinctively frowned. Looking at me, I didn't intend to break in. I cut him off. What are you doing here? You must already know about the imperial edict. From this day forward, we have no connection whatsoever. His eyes darkened, and he lost all desire to explain. After a long silence, he finally looked at me coldly and said, You lied to me. I didn't deny it. So what if I did? Su Changjin dismissed those around him and walked to a nearby pavilion. He positioned himself where he could see me. yet remain out of earshot of my conversation with Wei Sun. Seeing Su Changjin leave, Wei Sun glanced at me impassively, letting out a cold laugh. I thought you truly didn't mind my past actions. That you genuinely wished to be my wife. But that wasn't the case. My agreement to celebrate the flower festival with him was merely to delay him. All these years, I devoted myself to being his wife, the daughter-in-law of the Wei family, precisely to prepare for my departure today. I remained silent, tacitly acknowledging his words. Wei Sun's lips tightened. He had never been toyed with like this before. If you resent me for what happened with Wang Ruoqing, I accept that blame. But I was young then, prone to mistakes. I married you, yet treated you coldly. Now I wish I could slap my past self. Why not let go of your resentment and trust me just this once? I looked at him, feeling strangely calm. But what was your original intention in marrying me? Have you forgotten? Now you've abandoned Wang Ruoqing for me. But only because you no longer see her as the virtuous woman you once believed her to be. Should another woman like her appear in the future, you would fall for her again. And when that happens, if I try to stop you, you'll resent me for not being virtuous enough. For failing to be the perfect wife for Wei Sun. Wei Sun. This is who you truly are. You're deceitful and fickle. Staying by your side. I see no hope. Despite all I said, Wei Sun's expression remained unchanged. Only when I uttered the final words did his face suddenly drain of color. He leaned backward, nearly losing his balance. My parents rushed over, stepping between us. They summoned the guards, who finally escorted Wei Sun away. Over the years, I've seen his back countless times. Full of vigor, noble and solemn, always poised and composed. But now, watching his retreating figure, I sensed an unexpected touch of desolation. As I withdrew my gaze, Su Changjin approached me. The fluttering edge of his ink-black sleeve caught my eye. He smiled, holding aloft a fresh bouquet still fragrant, and placed it in my hands. It was his fault, not yours. I took the flowers. When I looked up again, the crowd had vanished. I gazed at Su Changjin, feeling awkward. My emotions still churned, but I couldn't show too much before him. I could only whisper, "Thank you." He smiled faintly. "I should have given them to you long ago." My heart tightened. Before I married Wei Sun, I heard Su Changjin nearly stormed the imperial palace. He felt it was unfair, and so did I. But we were powerless. The Su family could restrain him for a time, but not forever. They knocked him unconscious and sent him away that very night. Later, when I married Wei Sun and attended the princess's flower viewing banquet, I happened to meet Su Changjin's sister. She looked at me, her expression stiffening slightly. I didn't know what to say either. After a moment's hesitation, she finally pulled me aside. "My brother hasn't been doing well these past days. Though our parents forbade him from returning to the capital, he escaped back anyway. But that day happened to be your wedding day. He stood beside me, watching for a long time. I almost thought he was going to kidnap the bride. In the end, he only told me he'd seen the wedding gown you embroidered. He said this trip was worth it." My throat tightened, and I couldn't speak. She pointed to the flowering quince nearby and smiled. "My brother planted a whole courtyard of these before he left. They were meant for you." After staying at the Lin residence for a while, I bid farewell to my parents. Even before the divorce was finalized, I'd been pondering what I should do next. After much thought, I decided to travel and see the world. In the prime of my life, I couldn't just stay cooped up in the manor forever. Before I left, Wei Sun came looking for me several times. He still hadn't given up, thinking he could still turn things around. I don't know how many days of leave he actually took, but for a full fortnight, He seemed to have nothing better to do than linger outside the Lin residence. None of the gifts he brought could pass through the Lin residence gates. Standing amidst that pile of offerings, he waited for hours until a sudden downpour began. My parents never told me about this. Unaware he was outside, I recalled having laid books out to dry in the outer courtyard that morning. Hurrying over with my umbrella, I was spotted by Wei Sun. He stood in the rain, his clothes and robe soaked through. He rushed in, calling my name, Lin Shu. I looked at him and sighed, I have to go. He cleared his throat, looking at me with confusion. Go? Where? I smiled slightly, saying nothing. I turned and walked away. He tried to chase after me, but was stopped by the guards. He wanted to fight them off, but something stopped him, and in the end, he did not. Wei Sun stood rooted to the spot, his heart aching intensely. He had never imagined this day would come. He had believed that as long as he turned back, I would always be there. After that, as the river flowed endlessly and the green mountains held perilous towers, Wei Sun often regretted that he could no longer wait for his beloved to glance back at him. The day I left was a bright, sunny one. I had told my parents not to inform Su Changjin, but when I had ridden 10 li out of the capital, I heard the neighing of horses. A man and his steed came galloping toward me. Su Changjin stopped before me. He didn't ask where I was going, but handed me a bundle. Take it. I stood stunned for a long moment. He urged me again. Hurry, or I'll go with you. Only then did I take it. He tugged the reins, raising his eyebrows at me with a rare, spirited look, not a trace of his former reserve. If I find you someday, you'll marry me. How about it? I smiled softly, remembering that branch of crabapple blossoms. In the end, I nodded. All right. Su Changjin stood behind me, watching me ride away. But I knew all along there was another person, always following not far behind. But none of that mattered anymore. I'd trained for 2 years and became an excellent rider. I wouldn't lose my grip on the reins. I wouldn't fall. Whatever lay ahead, I would recognize it. The end.